So, Alan, a famous day on Saturday evening there. You were there in commentary, first time Ireland have beaten the All Blacks in New Zealand. What a special night, but they played so well, didn't they?
Yeah, they were superb. I think the, I suppose the confidence and self-belief was there and very evident from the word go. I think the way Ireland started the game again, particularly, for Andrew Porter's try and just their control and their precision and accuracy, I think that obviously gave them a really good feeling about, you know, where they could take the game and the potential to win it. It always helps when you start a game of rugby well. It doesn't mean they're just going to continue for the whole game. And they had that same scenario the week before in Auckland. Started very well with that Keith Earls try and did really well for probably 20, 28, 29 minutes, and then it unravelled on them. Of course, that was going to be in the back of their mind to stay on the job and be precise and aggressive in what they were doing, and they did that so well. Obviously, there was a few crazy it was a crazy period midway through that first half with the yellow card first for Fine Ganuku, then Tuanga Fassi yellow card, and Ta'avo the red card. So it's really disjointed the All Blacks, and probably that period of time where they were down to 13 men, you would have had a fear watching that Ireland didn't capitalise and didn't actually score more points during that period. They could have had a penalty try as well. So, then New Zealand scored a try before half time, and James Ryan is in the bin, so it's 14v14, and you think, God, is that opportunity lost? But they came out at half time and it was 14v14, and Andrew Porter gets the second try, and that was the one I think that really kind of reignited Ireland again. And but you've got to give them massive credit. They were absolutely brilliant to respond from the opening test defeat to bring a performance like that. And arguably, you could say you could make a case for them that they should have won the game by more.
Yeah, it's funny because going into it, Andy Farrell only made one change. There was obviously questions, should he make more, but it was certainly vindicated. Like they were unbelievable from the off, but there wasn't one fault you can really criticize them for at all. Defensively they were brilliant, and they never took the foot off the gas. Sure, they didn't.
No, I think if there was any criticism, it was probably, and they probably say this themselves internally, that they should have been, they should have scored more points when New Zealand were reduced to 13 men. That would have really kind of made it very, very, very difficult for New Zealand to come back. They themselves got a lifeline with the Bowden Barrett try before half time, and that would have made people on the outside a little bit nervous. But to be fair, the players showed great composure. Their set piece was so much better this week, even though they lost a couple of lineouts. Their scrum was so much better. I think spacing in defence was spot on. They got a little bit narrow the week before and got punished for it. And they were very precise with their passing and created a lot of opportunities and line breaks and had more offloads than New Zealand in the game. So I think it was incredibly impressive the way they went about it, and each and every player had top performance, and you need that to win these type of matches. You couldn't criticize any player who said that they didn't play really well. So many man of the match performances from so many players, and the same will be required this week. It's going to be a different challenge. There's going to be a big reaction, but to win in New Zealand soil for the first time is another wonderful achievement for some of these players, for all of the players. But there's a lot of players in that Irish team have beaten New Zealand 4 times in the last 7 matches. A lot of the same players are there. There's a couple, I think 3. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but Tyke Furlong, Johnny Sexton, and Conor Murray have been involved in matches that have victories against New Zealand on 5 occasions, which is incredible. And that's including the Lions in 2017. So there's obviously a self-belief and not an expectation, because expectation is a very strong word, but a belief that if you get your game right, the gap is closed, and what they did Saturday night was just immense. I think they deserve huge credit, and the coaching staff. You said it. Andy Farrell only made one change. He backed that bit of continuity, and they obviously believed that they needed to keep the group together to try and go again and fix the wrongs of the previous week and the frustrations, because they said it after that first test that there was things that happened in that game that they can fix, and they did that. Challenges to replicate that again in a third test, and it's going to be more difficult. But players and coaching staff and everyone involved deserve massive credit for a wonderful, wonderful win.
Yeah, they do indeed. And what about the man at the heart of it all, the captain, Johnny Sexton? 37 today, Quinny. Still going, playing some unbelievable rugby. It's so impressive as well, because there's been so many times in his career he's been doubted by the outside. Not that he cares that much at all, I'm sure. But like, even at the weekend, obviously kicking his goals, but just running the game from start to finish, it was very, very good.
Yeah, it's incredible what he's achieved in his career up to this point, but he just he keeps going and going and getting better, and he's become a brilliant captain to this team, and his drive and desire to win and that never say die attitude, I think, is rubbing off on other players, and they're creating real mental strength and resilience. Of course, Johnny Sexton would have had disappointments this year. With Leinster losing the Champions Cup final and the URC semi-final, that would have been very, very disappointing. And I spoke to him last week, and he said that, look, of course it was disappointing, but they're two separate things, and the mood in the Irish camp is very, very positive. They're getting plenty of detail and brilliant coaching from the Irish coaches, and that he was incredibly looking forward to the challenge, and he's backed up his words about them having a real chance of going doing something special. And as I said, they believe it. He believes it, and 37 today to stay going and to be actually playing as good as he's playing. He was absolutely brilliant again the other night, and he just keeps going, and it's an incredible story. And there's this, for any young players or people who write players off in their early 30s and say, well, now that they're in their 30s, they're gone. He'll actually help a lot of people going forward, that they can keep going, and maybe we'll see that if you look after your body right and you get a bit of luck. And look, the RFU system is very helpful to Irish players in the breaks and the rest that they can have. And it's Johnny would admit that himself. He's not playing 35, 40 games a year, which can happen in France, but his performances just keep getting better and better. And I think there will be life after Johnny Sexton, but he'll be certainly missed. But in the here and now, he's done a remarkable job with this team and leading them, inspiring them, and actually playing really well individually himself. So it's a great achievement by him, and hopefully he stays in that kind of form. And I think look, it's further down the track, but everyone within Irish rugby and this team, the vast majority of them will go to the World Cup. There'll be new faces in, but it's 14, 15 months away. Getting past that quarter-final stage it will be the last kind of feather in the cap that Johnny Sexton will want. And the last World Cup was really disappointed. So he takes the disappointments hard, and the achievements, I think, I hope he gives himself enough of credit. And sometimes when you're the player, it's just turning around really, really quickly. But they'll be remembered forever, those Irish players. They were the first team to win in New Zealand, and it was an incredible achievement.
Yeah, they were the first team to win in New Zealand. And going into this weekend, such a big match in Wellington, series decider, more of the same. You obviously think they can get it done, Quinny, do you?
Yeah, I thought they would be a lot better in the second test, and I was confident that they would make it a real kind of they would be in the game in the second test. Look, it's fair to say for anybody that when you're down here and you're playing against New Zealand, that no matter how well you're playing, no matter how good you are, it's still going to be very, very difficult. They very, very rarely lose. at home or away for that matter, even when they're going through kind of a bit of a lull and they would have been very disappointed going out in the semi-final at the World Cup in 2019, and it's seen as a devastation when they don't win every trophy that's going. But this week is going to be a real challenge for Ireland now to see if they can, and back it up. The narrative, Stuart, would be, well, we've won a test, and it's no matter what happens next week, we're still kind of the first team to ever do that, and it's a success. But I doubt it very much that any of the players or the management, particularly the senior players or the management, will accept that situation. They'll want to try and put their best foot forward and win the third test and win a series here. And that's going to be incredibly difficult because, New Zealand will react. They'll feel that certain decisions went against them. The misfortune of what happened with Tavo's red card. There was no intention there. I felt sorry for the player. I felt sorry for Gary Ringrose. Both of them were injured as well, first and foremost. But, he's not intentionally trying to hit him with his head. Some people down here were arguing it's just a rugby collision and, there should be common sense and the player shouldn't be sent off. But it's just the way the laws are now, trying to protect people. There's an onus on the tackler to go much lower, and you've got to be really careful about what sort of impact you have when you don't have the ball and you're tackling people. So it was very unfortunate. So things went wrong on them. Players dropped passes. They made mistakes. Will they be as bad next week? No chance. They're going to be a lot better and they're going to be really angry. And I'm intrigued to see how Ireland will do, because I think Ireland will really believe and back themselves. They're in good form, but they've got to withstand a bit of a backlash. And I think what they've got to try and do in the game is to really manage the tempo of the game and control the pace of it, that it doesn't become crazily frantic. You've got to stop New Zealand. You've got to slow them down. You've got to attack their breakdown and put pressure on them. And Ireland did that brilliantly last week, and the challenge will be to do it again this week against a side who are under immense pressure. You'll have a captain who's going to be questioned. He was questioned before the tour. There was an argument that Dalton Papali'i possibly could be picked ahead of Sam Cane as a 7 against your captain. Sam Whitelock was questioned. Vitalik, some senior players, Aaron Smith, all wonderful players, So they actually, when they do lose and when they're going through a bad spell, they get a lot of criticism here. It's like a religion here in New Zealand. So they'll be feeling the heat this week, and when you're backed into a corner, you come out fighting. So they will come out fighting, and they're very talented rugby players. So will Ireland be able to stop them and slow them down this week? Well, I think they'll make a fair go of it, but deep down there's a fear that it could be a very, very, very challenging situation for Ireland. But Ireland have proved now that they're a very good side, and they deserve nothing but credit for that. And they've got to withstand that backlash and handle it. And the thing for Ireland to do here is, and they'll notice themselves, if they can replicate. They can only control themselves. They can't control what New Zealand bring. But if they can control themselves and execute well at their set piece, have good discipline, good defensive line speed, bring an aggression, well, I think they're good enough then to be in the test match and have a chance of winning it. Easier said than done. You need a little bit of luck to win games like this. I think it's going to be a cracker. It's going to be incredibly exciting, and it could be very close.
Yeah, man, who was so crucial on Saturday as well as Sexton and the whole team in actual fact, Quinny, but Peter O'Mahony, how good was he? So confrontational, but so good, and picked his moments at the right time all throughout the 80 minutes. Like, his rugby this year has been outstanding, hasn't it?
Yeah, Peter O'Mahony's had a great year. I think even though Munster have struggled and probably haven't had their best seasons, they haven't had their best season. There's no probably about it. Right from the word go, I remember doing games at the start of the season in the URC, and he played early on the season, and he was very good. and he kept that consistency going all the way through. Would have been disappointed not to be selected in November. But he'd a lot of big performances this year, and he fought his way back into the Irish side, and has put in two big performances. Even the game in Eden Park, he was very good. He was brilliant the other night. The 50-22 kind of capped it all off. But his own back row colleagues, Caelan Doris, a little bit quieter in Auckland, didn't have the same kind of impact that we want him to have. He's a wonderful footballer. He was an immense presence the other night, absolutely outstanding. Turnovers, carries, jackals, brilliant footwork, and Josh van der Fleer. He's been probably the most consistent player in Irish rugby in the last 12 to 14 months. Just every single time he plays, he's right up there in contention with player of the game. So as a unit, they played really well, and I thought James Ryan, Tyg Byrne, and the front row were all exceptional as well. They worked really incredibly hard as a unit, and they were harassing the All Blacks when they had the ball in possession, and they got stuck into them physically. So they had a bit of a challenge in the gauntlet laid down to them, I'm sure, by the coaches from the week before, that their scrum and line-up let them down a bit. But Peter O'Mahony was kind of to the forefront, and the other seven were behind him, and the impact off the bench. Rob Herring coming off the bench, Finlay Beelum, Cian Healy, Jack Conan, all brilliant. They really offered themselves, and Kieran Treadwell as well. So at the end of the game, the whole bench was on, and they'll be needed again this week. Some of them unfortunately have to double up with the Maori game, and that's going to be a bit tricky this week for them.
Yeah, final one, Alan. If they are to beat New Zealand again and win a series, which would be remarkable, is it just the same type of game plan? Obviously, there's a couple of injuries there, but do you expect the same type of 23 who are fit that finish that game in the second test, or how do you all see it planning out? New Zealand, you mentioned there earlier, will be better, but how much better, and how good can Ireland take their game to again?
Yeah, well, they've got to really kind of just build on what they did in that second test. These things historically can flip right over, and you can see a totally different game on Saturday, and one team doesn't play well. I believe both of them will actually play well this week, and it'll be down to who takes their chances. The fear you have around that is that New Zealand have these X-factor players like Sevu Reece and Rieko Ioane. Will Jordan will probably start this week, and they're incredible athletes. If they get any sort of flow and momentum or time and space, they can really hurt you. And they showed in the first test, the 4 tries in the first half were just, they upped the ante, and they didn't have to work incredibly hard for their tries. So they have that ability to break you down and do something special. So Ireland are going to have to really be on the money again defensively, and it's going to take a very energetic effort. I hope they have it in their legs. It's been a long season. I don't think they're physically worn out, but mentally it's another big ask to go again. But I think what they showed in the second test, I don't think there'll be many changes from the team. I don't think there'll be any changes from the team. I think the way they play, I think that continuity and that the way they passed the ball and their accuracy was so much better. I do think maybe a little bit on Saturday night they might have to truck the ball up a little bit and be a bit more direct, because I think New Zealand will expect them to try and put width in the game again. And if you break down the wider channels, you're a little bit more vulnerable to turnovers. So look, they'll still need a good kicking game. I don't think we'll see anything dramatically different. They don't need to chase it. I think what they will want to do is try and start the game as well. And I think the longer, an ideal scenario for Ireland would be leading from the start. But you're not going to keep New Zealand scoreless. So the thing is to make sure the game doesn't get away from Ireland at any stage. And the longer they stay in contention, the more doubt that'll maybe seep into New Zealanders, and the more self-belief, because Ireland just have to make sure that they're in this game, not just in the first half, but in the second half and the latter parts of the game. And I think if they're in that situation, I think they'll really believe they can go on and win the series. So they've shown it. It can go anyway. here. It could go pear-shaped. Ireland could be very dominant, who knows? But I think no matter what happens, Ireland have become a very, very good team, and that's the reality of it. Of course, if we get a couple of injuries and if we're stretched a little bit, and we were talking about that, maybe the depth the week before, Michael Bent had to warm up. They were down a number of players, and everything isn't just suddenly perfect with the Irish team. And that's the whole idea of this tour. Andy Farrell wants to develop more talent, try and build his squad a little bit more, and for players to learn about these brilliant experiences that are happening, and they don't come easy. You have to work incredibly hard, and that's probably the point, Stuart. Ireland have to work incredibly hard for to get to this point, and their collective is their big strength. Whereas I think New Zealand are a bit disjointed, and they have these incredible athletes who can do special things, and you've got to stay on the money all the time and stay really focused to stop them doing that. And they forced it a little bit last week, so I think they'll learn a little bit from that. So I think they'll be better. Ireland will certainly need to be better if they want to win this game.
Well, set for a classic in the third test in Wellington. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.